Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Today is Dennis Walcott's first official day on the job as school's chancellor. After making waffles for students and the press on Friday, Walcott delivered a major address over the weekend. He vowed to change the tone of the debate over city schools. So can the chancellor lower the volume over the mayor's education agenda? And is that the right message for Walcott to be delivering at the start of his tenure? Here to discuss that question and much more are the four members of our Consultants Corner. We've got Republicans Mike McEwen and Kevin Fullington, and Democrats L. Joy Williams and Scott Levenson. Welcome to all of you. Let me start with you. Can we assume that what Dennis Walcott is doing is simply tone, or is he actually changing the policy?
Well, it's got to start with tone, right? I mean, it was a disaster for a couple of weeks there. It was all about the chancellor, not about the kids and not about the schools. And so I think it's got to start with that. And I think Dennis has been exactly right. He's been pitch perfect to date on the tone. And he is a guy of substance. He's a person who has a long track record, long history in the city, great relationships with lots of important constituencies. I think that the substance will follow and he will be able to deliver, but it starts with this, and he's off to a tremendous start.
I think it actually would have been helped if it started with the mayor recognizing that he did something wrong or made a mistake in the first place with Kathy Black. And I don't think he did Dennis Walcott any service by not admitting that error, because it shows the general public, the parents of our school teachers, that he is just out of touch, doesn't quite get what the problem with appointing Kathy Black in the first place is. I agree with Mike that to date, and the publicity tour that Dennis Walcott has done over the last week has been phenomenal and the right tone, but the proof is in the pudding. Right. And the real challenge for him is to deal with the mayor's policies, which are the real problem. That honeymoon period will be short.
Right, and following Kathy Black to the chancellor's office is a bit like following Charlie Sheen to the podium at an AA meeting. I mean, there's nothing he can say in this period that people will think is not fantastic. But that doesn't change the policies that the city has been advancing and will continue to advance. And as long as the administration is pushing for repeal of LIFO, as long as they are pushing for merit-based pay, as long as they are pushing for teacher evaluation that then dictates compensation, there's going to be loggerheads. And there are intractable differences between the ideology and the interests of some of these intractable interests and the administration and their goals. So you're right, Scott, there is a honeymoon period that we're seeing now. The only question is how long does it last and how nasty does it get when it ends?
4,000 layoffs, right?
How long does it last?
But with that, there's not going to be any significant change to any of those policies. I mean, we're not talking about a brand new person who wasn't in this administration to begin with. You know, he was there, Dennis Walcott was there throughout the administration's education policy, so there's not going to be any drastic changes. What will happen is this appearance of transparency and openness and access that parents have been lacking for the last since Bloomberg has been in office, and that's what Dennis Walcott brings.
But I hope there's not a change in the substance. I mean, the agenda that Kevin worked out for us is an important agenda that needs to continue to be advanced. And if we have an intelligent conversation about it in a common, rational way, I think people will see that these are the right policies for the city, right policies for the schools, and it'll be a good idea if we can have a real conversation instead of screaming at each other.
Well, and the real challenge for the chancellor is this threat that's the mayor's been hanging over the teachers for 6 months now, which is layoffs. And if the chancellor proceeds with the mayor's plan to talk some 4,000 layoffs, that honeymoon period is going to be over lickety-split.
Well, they've gone to great pains to say that it's not if, it's when, right? That it's no change there at all.
And I believe that if they follow through on their plans for those kind of layoffs, when half the political folks out there are saying it's not necessary, his honeymoon period will be over in no time.
And the message will be the same. It'll just be from a kinder, gentler chancellor.
But let me push you on that a little bit, Joy, because when it came to, say, policing, where the policies of the previous administration were continued, the tone seems to have been part of the substance. Meaning, you know, there were 1,000 people went to jail under the last mayor. Essentially, the same policies are in place. nobody's going to jail, or very few people, much less uproar. So, I mean, keeping the civic peace is part of what the chancellor's supposed to do, right?
Yeah, and definitely keeping the access and the openness and sort of an atmosphere that people are being listened to, and that will go a long way in moving the policies forward.
Mm-hmm.
But the reduction in staffing shouldn't lead directly to the removal of the honeymoon, because I don't think anyone questions the idea that the mayor wants to lay off teachers. He absolutely does not. It's just the economic realities of the budget might require it. And so either you have some substantive policy objections with what he's doing or not, but you have to understand that he doesn't want to lay teachers off. He just might have to because of where the budget is.
There are no real requirements. These are all choices, right? It's one cut versus another. So this idea that there's a required or a mandated layoff is not really truthful. These are a series of choices that the mayor and his administration are going to make. You're right. I agree that tone matters. And this effort to appear conciliatory, to involve parents in the process, will make a difference. But when you dig underneath it, it's making a difference now because it's in the vacuum left by Kathy Black. When that vacuum is over and people are comfortable with this new chancellor, nice guy, but if the policies are off and they're laying off teachers, there'll be no forgiveness.
But Scott, 50% of the budget is Medicaid and schools. So you don't really have a choice.
Well, you do really have a choice, and everybody's saying there's a choice. The mayor is not, anyway, we can sit there and debate whether he has to lay off 4,000, or he has to lay off 2, or he has to lay off 1,200. I don't know enough about the budget to make that determination now, but nobody does.
Right, but if he does lay people off, it will be because he didn't have a choice. He doesn't want to lay people off.
I don't agree with that.
Well, again, I mean, let's remember that this is a mayor who's put more money into the schools over the last 8 years than we've seen in the past. I mean, his record, his credibility on his commitment to the kids shouldn't be questioned because he's facing this challenge now. The reality.
You can't say that when you just picked Kathy Black as chancellor.
Well, but from an
How much
economic,
of a commitment
from
to
a
the kids
revenue
is
point of
that?
view, he put a
How
ton
much
of
of a
money
commitment, Mike,
into this.
is
Listen,
to the kids when he picked Kathy Black? You can't get much more tone deaf.
She didn't work
than
out.
that.
She
It's
didn't
not
work
just
out.
didn't work
But you
out.
can't, there's a long record that you need to judge a guy by, and his
not
record
just didn't
includes
work out.
record investments in our schools. So you have to look at the totality of it. Now,
Agreed.
listen, that said, they're going to, if they go down the route of laying off teachers, they're going to have to make the case as to why and what's the economic argument for it. And I think that having someone like Dennis Walcott, who's a rational person with great credibility, making that case gives them a much better place to start from.
And we are going to see more about that in the future. Let's move to another topic. The president is engaged in high-stakes deficit politics, which has intruded into the real world outside of the Beltway. Standard & Poor's today said the debt, the credit worthiness of the United States has to be downgraded. Is this a game changer? Is this something brand new? Was this inevitable? Is there a way to come back from the brink?
Well, first of all, I hope that the House Republicans put the Democrats' feet to the fire. That the need for reform in Washington, the need to rein in spending, the need to reduce the size of government is real, more real than it's ever been, and that if this is an opportunity to use that to force that agenda, I hope they do so and they don't give in too early. Listen, you don't want to make the markets crater. You don't want to do anything irresponsible. But the reality is that this country, Republicans are on the right side of this issue from a political point of view with the environment that we live in right now. And I hope the Republicans stick to their guns for as long as they can.
And for as long as they can is the operative word here. I think everybody realizes there's going to be an increase in the debt allowance for our country. You need to do that. It's going to come with some spending concessions on the part of the administration, but it's also going to come with them being able to raise the revenue issue on folks who are earning more than $250,000 a year. And that really allows the president to do two things. One, it continues in this vein of bipartisan, not governing vitriolically. So you have the Republican Party who's trying to do these rhetorically based policy arguments which just don't hold water for the general public in the real world. They know that we're dealing with a complex situation where the debt ceiling has to get raised and there has to be some revenue side to this. That's a reality view, not a jingoistic
I
point
see
of
folks
view.
squirming, wanting to jump into this conversation, and we're going to continue it in just a minute. Right now, though, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll have more with our Consultants Corner. Later on, I'm going to tell you how you can comment on tonight's program. Stay with us.